Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another live stream of the University of the Philippines Association in Victoria. I'm your host tonight, Rochelle Castro, a member of UPAV, and I'm very privileged to be the one hosting our guest, Anna Manuel. Welcome, Anna, and thank you for giving your time for this live stream. Thanks very
Uh,
much.
Thank you, Rochelle. I'm glad to be here.
Everyone, so tonight's session is actually an offset to encourage everyone to join our contest. But for this evening, our session is on Kwentuhang Pinoy with Anna Manuel. So Anna is actually a professional storyteller, and I don't usually meet one, and that is very important in any profession. I assure you that. She's also a coach and for creative educators. Anna is also a writer and illustrator of Leo's Pet Bug, and we'll ask her a bit more about that. And she is also a kamishibai, which is a paper theater practitioner, which for me is actually really, really interesting. A bit more about Anna. Anna has unique set of skills. She creates interactive, she engages with fun story sessions, and she enjoys that with both children and adults. So it's not just for children, it's even for adults. She also writes and illustrates kamishibai stories, which is actually a Japanese paper theater. So I tell you, she's got a lot of really unique, and I don't usually meet people who are professionals in this space. Her first kamishibai story was Leo's Pet Bug, which was published in picture book format with the same name. So, being surrounded with different languages, growing up in the Philippines, and then working overseas, Anna has been using stories to facilitate early literacy and cultural curiosity. So, through her creative trainings, she supports educators, librarians, and artists to incorporate fun, engaging, and inclusive stories in their practice to enhance children's development. And she's currently in the Books in Homes role model and an audio narrator in Vision, Australia's Felix Library. So, welcome again, Anna. I'd like to, there's so much to explore, but I want to start off with, could you please share with us your journey as a professional storyteller? Which particularly, what were your challenges as being one, meaning a professional storyteller, and those challenges that you've experienced, how did you overcome them?
Okay, just jumping off from one of the things you mentioned about, it's meeting a storyteller is not, you don't meet a storyteller every day. um, and initially I thought, yeah, it's not a thing. Up until, because my background's in, I was a reading teacher. And so I worked a lot with kids and stories. And there came a point when I worked in schools long enough, and I worked with kids and knew, like what lights them up. And I just saw the power in stories and using stories to teach them practically anything. And so I thought to myself, well, if the curriculum or the school systems are not aligned or are not valuing stories as much as I personally do, why not, bring stories myself, create that space. And through that journey, I used my skill set as a reading teacher and my background in performing in creating a sharing of stories that inspires children to read more, to love reading, to love the spoken word, to be in a world that I painted for them and with them. Because I understand when I was a kid, I just loved listening to stories. And yeah, it just really brings you to that moment in time when you actually didn't experience it yourself, but you feel like you're very much part of the story and you're there when the story was happening. And that's magical. And I feel like, as we go through life, we don't have much opportunities to be in that space of magic and awe and childlike curiosity. So, yeah, so I created a space for myself to share my love for stories. And from then, I was doing it at that time for about 4 or 5 years. I realized that I couldn't be everywhere at the same time bringing stories. So I thought, well, what if I coach other people? So librarians and teachers, other artists, in bringing engaging stories in their practice. And because everybody knows that stories are powerful, I feel like with my experience and my background and my understanding of children, that I'll be able to support them in creating a magical space for whoever they're serving. Yeah, so I guess that's a brief description journey of how I landed in this job I thought I made up. I wish
Yeah,
maybe
no,
I made
it's
up.
thank you for that. I'm capturing words. It's really different. In the world that I'm in, surrounded by different types of professionals. It's different. Speaking to your type of professional, especially someone who is actually a professional performer, because when you say words, it's actually quite, it captures me. It's like the words are actually talking to me. You use the words like the power of storytelling, and how schools don't provide that at the moment, and that tool is actually very powerful for children to learn more things. Did
Mhm.
you from and everyone, like myself, Anna is actually also a fellow alumni from UP. So coming off from the university, did you start off as a reader, or did that happen later on in your professional career?
Mm, I started off as, yeah, I think I would say I've always read, but again, like I've read everything. Like I've read picture books, I've read um, Bible stories, anything that like I was surrounded with when I was growing up in the Philippines. I also consumed a lot of oral tales. So my parents, my older sister, people who come and work at the house or in the community, they told stories, and so I think I'm a consumer of stories ever since I was a kid, and yeah, and I was always at the library, so yeah, so looking back now, like, oh yeah, I've always loved stories and surrounded myself with stories.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's triggering a lot of things about the joys and challenges of being a creative professional. You mentioned that you can't be in all places at once. That trigger that. Why don't I train other professionals? So, what kind of training have you provided to the other professionals to be in this space, to be a professional storyteller?
um so because people in this space, or like different professions, as I mentioned earlier, librarians, teachers, and artists, and even community workers, they operate in different spaces. They're catering to different communities. And so one of my programs is finding a story that would speak to the community. Another program is if they're working with story making with children, how do you facilitate children's voices in stories? How do you teach children how to make their stories? Because adults writing their stories, that's another program. write, what stories do you want to write, how do you want to tell it, what tools can you use. That's another program. But empowering children in different communities, that's a totally different, I guess, space from where you're coming from, because you're actually tapping into curiosities and creativity of kids. And as an adult writing a story, that would be very different from a child writing a story. So how do you allow a space of empowerment and inspiration in children?
Because of technology, there have been, a lot of researches. You know this probably more than I do, about everything being there in front of children. And this, what are the challenges as a professional storyteller in respect of encouraging children to really appreciate stories and get to read more and get to know more stories? What are the challenges in that you're seeing?
Mm, well, I guess like with children especially, and adults included, whatever is most interesting, whatever is easiest, that's the thing that we get drawn towards. So when I was growing up, um, the competition of stories, of books, is TV, and now there's so much more, right? um, I think the challenge now is to be in the space where children are. So if children are on apps, for example, on on devices, on computer games, how do we incorporate stories in those things? Because I've I've been in different schools, in primary schools, and I saw that kids still write stories, but now they're drawing stories on iPads. They're doing animations. And so if we keep on, if we keep them in that space of like, oh, you need to write a story down, you need to tell it this way, you need to read aloud, then that's so boring. And now I think the challenge for us, creative educators and also parents, is, like, where are the kids at? Like, how can we make reading as interesting? How can we make story making as interesting as all these other things that kids engage with?
I guess for the viewers out there, particularly parents, I hope you're getting a lot from the advice and points of view of Anna about how to approach and encourage children to enjoy more of the stories by incorporating what they have and not making them go away from what is in front of them, but incorporating it. But I'll turn now to actually your work, Leo's Pet Bug. Could you tell us more about your work?
Sure. Okay, so this is Leo's Pet Bug, and it was a picture book that I wrote in 2017, now 2018. And I was inspired to create this book because I met wonderful kids in my kindergarten class back in Bangkok, and I was moved to tell their story of courage, of like how kids, especially like in a group, like in schools or in communities, they feel like they need to follow everybody in what they're doing and what they love doing, in like what's the latest trends and all those things. But this story was inspired by children who actually believed in what they wanted and stood by what their choice is. So in this context, it's a bug, it's a pet that you won't normally see children or people keep. Um, and so doing this story has brought me on a journey of self-publishing, and I learned a lot about working with editors and illustrators and graphic designers, all the people behind one picture book. So the next time you see a picture book, there are so many nameless, faceless people who made that book possible. And sorry, I got distracted by my own reflection. And so, yeah, so I was saying, so I created this book with a team who supported me along the way, from story ideation until the actual publishing. And what I learned from that is if you have a team behind you, if you have people working with you on a project, like a storybook, then it is possible to get your story out there, because I believe that all of us have that unique story that only we can tell. And others need to hear that, because that's a representation of the different slices of life that we have.
I'm going to repeat what you just said. All of us has a story to tell. And to those of us who have that um, uh, motivation to actually share our story, it is possible to actually, with a team backed up, to actually bring up the story, just as what that you've done. And speaking of stories, Anna, and you know this, and this is for everyone. UPAV is hosting a competition called Kwentuhang Pinoy. It's celebrating Filipino through storytelling. And so this competition, this contest is for everyone out there to submit a short film or performance. The entries open until the 21st of August 2022. So the short film or performance should be up to 5 minutes, and the theme is Pusong Pinoy, and it to be delivered in Filipino, and the category is primary or secondary school level. So the shortlist entries we will notify you by the 28th of August. There will be performances and awards on the 4th of September, and that's going to be hosted by Charlotte McDowell. So that's this competition called Kwentong Pinoy, Celebrating Filipino Through Storytelling, is brought to you by the University of the Philippines Alumni Association in Victoria, in collaboration with barangay.com.au, and supported by the Victorian Multicultural Commission here in Victoria. So we're very, very excited with that. But let's go back to Anna. She's the guru in this space. Anna, could you give those applicants who want to submit their entries, who's listening, 5 tips that you can give them for making a submission for the Kwentong Pinoy competition?
Okay, where do I begin? Okay, only 5. Okay. I think so tip number 1, when we tell a story, so the typical story flow plot that, like the kids viewing now, you probably know this, you've learned this in school, is you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I would like to invite you to like go with me on a feeling of a story. So in the beginning, you would want to make your audience go, ooh. So make them curious about the story. And then you take them on the journey of the character and make them go, oh, oh. Make them lean in to the character's life and journey. And then make them go, oh no. So make them feel they care about the character, like the character's in trouble. make them care about, like make them want the character to be successful in this. And then you bring them to, yay, the character's making it. The character's trying to solve the problem. And at the end, take them and make them go, ah. So the story's resolved, problems resolved, the story's done. And so again, make them go, ooh, ah, oh no, yay. Ah. It's all those feelings that make a story powerful and meaningful and memorable. That's tip number one. Tip two is you have many tools that you can use to tell a story. You can do it on your own, just using your face, your voice, your actions. You can also tell stories if you have your favorite stuffed animals. You can tell a story with them. You can make them talk. Or if you are lucky and you have puppets, you can use them too to tell a story, right? You can use them to tell a story. If you don't have puppets, no problem. So these puppets were actually gifted to me, and I haven't bought a puppet. You can use paper as your puppet. Be as creative as you want. You can also use, if you're into music, you can use instruments that you play. You can put some melody, some rhythm in your story to make it more interesting, and also show off your skills in, whatever you play, piano, guitar, ukulele, violin. So there are different tools that you can use to tell your story, whether you're telling it to a live audience or recording it. And tip number three, I would encourage you to use your own voice. So what I mean by that is, okay, picture yourself. Okay, you know the story that you're going to tell, and picture yourself telling that story to a friend. What words will you use? How would you tell it? To create, to make your friend feel that the story is happening right now, right here, with her or with them or with him. How would you do that? Because I've seen some storytellers, whether young or children or adults, they kind of sound the same. They kind of look to what was done before, and they feel or think, or you might feel and think that that's the way to go. But storytelling, it's so different. It could be so different. And again, what I said earlier, we all have a story to tell, and we have our own special way to tell that story. And so use this experience in preparing to join the competition as practice for you to find your voice, find how you would tell your story in your own special and unique way. So that's tip number 3, right? Okay, tip number 4. I think tip number 4, I guess, like maybe logistics in terms of, like if you're going to perform online, just make sure that when you, like when I'm talking right now, like I actually am looking at the camera and imagining you listening to me. So that in that way, you feel like I'm talking to you. And so when you perform your story online, when you record your story, talk to the camera. Imagine your friends or your family at the other end, listening, engaging with you. And tip number 5 would be rehearse. So practice, rehearse, because that's how stories evolve. That's how, you might have written a story and you love exactly how it's written. But once you tell it, it starts to take its own form. It starts reshaping itself because written stories have a different personality, I would say, a different personality, a different tone versus stories that are orally told, right? Because you're telling the story to a live audience. So rehearse, practice, and you'll find your a comfortable space. You'll get there, and when you do, that's when you start recording. You start feeling confident about how what you're going to tell and how you're going to tell your story. Oh, my tip number 6. Can I just insert one more? Tip number 6 is have fun. Have fun, because we know, and as a you know that when a person is having fun telling a story or doing something that they love, you'll feel it. And I think this contest is more about this competition is more about having fun, getting the practice in, having fun, and sharing your stories.
I felt like I just got entertained. I got lost with just telling your story. You were giving tips, but I felt like you were still telling a story, and I loved it. That's it. That's it. Have fun. See the banner. Thank you for those 5 tips, Anna. And guys, keep that in mind. To those storytellers, there is a prize. By the way, there's a prize to this competition, and the criteria would include engagement with theme, which is Pusong Pinoy. That's 30%. That's part of the criteria. The narrative is 30%. Originality, 20%. Audio and music quality, 10%. Entertainment value, 10%. So keep that in mind. If anyone is still thinking about submitting, UPAV is here to help. So please reach out and email us at upavcommittee@upalumnivic.org, and or reach out to us in Facebook and send a message, and we're out here. We're here to help you. We're happy to help you. And of course, this is the Kwentuhang Pinoy, Anna, is actually in celebration of Buwan ng Wika. So, and that's to celebrate. And that also allows us all to go back to our roots, whether we were born here or we are migrated here or we're the second or third or fourth generation migrants in Australia. So I look forward to the competition. I will definitely see you out there. But one last thing, Anna, I need to ask a favor.
Uh-oh.
Could you please share with us a sample story, a 3-minute sample story to inspire our participants out there to submit their stories?
Okay, I'll do the best that I can. Okay. So this story, I'll tell this story in Filipino. When I tell the story in English, it feels a bit different. And in Filipino, again, it's a little bit different as well, which is the power of languages in stories. And for this kwento, I will use a string. Okay, so what do you see? Dalawang masayang bata. Dalawang masayang bata ay nagpunta sa park. Pum, 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 pum. Pagdating nila sa park, pumunta sila at sumakay sila sa seesaw. Pataas, baba, pataas, baba, pataas, baba. Naisip nila, uy, mas magiging masaya to kapag ginawa nating mas mabilis. Kaya, taas, baba, taas, baba, taas, baba, taas, baba, taas, baba. Pagkatapos nilang maglaro sa seesaw, sila ay umakyat ng, alam niyo kung ano to? Slide. Pum, 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 pum. At sila ay nagpadaustos. Uy, mas maganda ito kapag, mas masaya, no? Kapag mas mabilis.
Kaya umakyat sila ng slide. Pum, 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 pum. At sila'y nagpadaustos. Bilis. Pagkatapos nilang pumunta at maglaro sa slide, sila ay pumunta sa kanilang paboritong parte ng park, ang swing. Nag-swing silang mababa, mataas, mababa, mataas, napakababa, napakataas. Nag-swing sila ng napakataas. Sila'y nahulog. Ako po. Buti na lang, hindi lang sila mga bata, ngunit sila ay mga sikretong doktor. Kaya sinuot nila ang kanilang stethoscope at kanilang pinakinggan ang tibok ng kanilang puso. Tibok, 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 tibok. Ngunit sila ay medyo nasaktan. Okay ka ba? Okay naman, pero masakit yung braso ko eh. Ako nga din eh. Kaya, kumamit sila ng arm sling. At nang naging mabuti-buti na ang kanilang pakiramdam, handa na silang umuwi. Pom, 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 pom. At tamang-tama, pagdating nila ng bahay, hapunan na, kung saan ang kanilang mga magulang ay nagluto ng pansit canton. At sabay-sabay silang kumain. Salamat nanay, salamat tita, salamat lola. At sila ay ang dalawang masayang bata.
You have to hear my clap. Galing, galing, galing. Thank you very much, Anna. You made me feel like many, many decades younger. Thank you very much. And yeah, no, absolutely. You literally made me feel like a kid again, and I remembered a lot of things. And hopefully our viewers there have been inspired. I really enjoyed this session, Anna. I look forward to everyone's entry. UPAV looks forward, and so we encourage you to remember at the 6th tip, have fun when you have these submissions. But again, thank you, Anna, for joining us in tonight's live stream. And I cannot wait to see the impact of this to those out there. If not to join the entry, at least to also understand and appreciate the impact of storytelling. So again, good night, everyone. And yeah, we'll see you at the event.
Maraming salamat!